can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. You put the palms down. All right. Good evening. Welcome back. Good to see you all. Welcome back. So here we go. I said on Saturday that, it's almost like 18 out of 24 months I got more used to sitting in like an empty meditation hall than with people. And I started doing this thing where like, I would kind of, when I lead, like I actually look at everybody, but 18 of the last 24 months, there's been nobody here. And so, but I started actually going like seat to seat to seat. And there's certain people, but that are always in the same seats. And so I would actually see you sitting here, like literally would see you two sitting here, even though you weren't here. I didn't start talking to you directly because then everybody would have thought I'd lost it completely. But it was really kind of neat. Like just to sit in the space is really beautiful, but it misses people. And so it's just really nice to be back with people again. And I mean, for me, I think the most important thing over these last 2 years has just been to try to wake up each day, each moment, and just have tremendous gratitude for the fact that I'm here. And so that's really been, I think, a big part of what has been driving me to just be grateful that here you are, and see what then comes from that. But there's just a lot. I always talk about how we go from one problem to the next, one difficulty to the next, one challenge to the next. And that's really what life is. And no matter what conflict we're having, once we get through that or conquer that or learn to be okay with that, the next one is waiting for us. And unfortunately, I think that the madness we've all been going through the last 2 years has just been an incredibly extreme level of madness. And, I'm just grateful to be alive, to see you all here, to our millions of YouTube followers chiming in from home. Millions. Wait. Yeah, there's a million. I just wanted to confirm. So it's just good to be with you all, and all of our YouTube followers. Thanks for joining us and keeping us going. Feel free to say hello and chat with yourself. You're actually too far for me to see the screen, but feel free to chat amongst yourselves, and hopefully together you can also solve all of the world's problems in the next 45 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. You're not going to figure anything out. The mind that races all day long won't shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of that. So posture, you just want to be comfortable. If any of you happen to be on a cushion, it helps. Slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. On a chair or bench, also just trying to sit up straight. Relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees, on the lap, whatever's comfortable for you. That will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness. In quiet. Simply sitting. Breathing. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment. It's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going. Your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape. It's direct perception into the present moment. And that present moment, as we know all too well, is very often incredibly difficult. And so this practice is learning to be with things as they are. Not running from it, not avoiding it, but actually diving right into it as it is and being with it, which is very difficult for us. To become an observer of the present moment is not usually what we want to do. We want to change it. We want to fix it. We want to correct it. We want to make it better. And that creates a lot of conflict in our minds. Not only do we not like the present moment, so we have that to deal with, then we have the difficulty of trying to change the present moment, which actually is impossible because once you recognize the present moment and then you try to change that present moment is already gone. So good luck with that, but that's kind of besides the point. Meditation's free, Buddhist practice free, sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter on a daily basis. We find ourselves in these moments throughout our day where our thoughts can get so wrapped up and consumed with everything outside of us. Whether it's within your own family, whether it's within your own community, whether it's state, globally, space, right? Whatever it is. So many thoughts just flying through our heads. And so, at the very essence, and for me, really, the heart of this practice is just taking time, remembering each day to just sit and breathe. And trying to move beyond this illusion of trying to control everything and everyone around you. And that's very difficult, especially when we have and see conflict around us. But it's hard enough to control our own thoughts and our own actions, our own words. And yet for some reason we get this idea in our head that we're going to be able to control the thoughts and words and actions of others. And we can't. So it's always coming back to what can you control? And what we can practice controlling is what we think, what we say, and what we do. Which again starts with, at the end of every meditation, stilling the body, stilling the speech, and stilling the mind. It starts with just ourselves. It's always just starting over with, here I am, sitting, breathing, and allowing everything to settle. The Buddha called this Bodhichitta, Buddha nature. So it's waking up to the Buddha nature that we all have, that already fully awakened being that we are. Beyond the greed and anger and ignorance and cravings and desires, beyond all of that is just us as we are. Happy dogs, unhappy dogs. Even the barking of a dog. So I hear the barking of a dog, and my first thought was like, that sounds like a really angry dog. What did you all hear? Happy or anger? Who heard happy? Who heard anger? Who didn't hear the dog? So my point was, as soon as I heard the dog, my first thought was, wow, that's an angry dog. But maybe the dog was totally excited. But I heard, like, not happy dog. I have no idea what's going on out there with the dog. I mean, hopefully the dogs are okay. It sounds like dogs are okay. But as soon as we hear a barking dog, I don't know what you all did, but as soon as I heard a barking dog, I immediately went to happy or unhappy dog, pleasant or unpleasant dog, what's going on? And my mind so quickly, I started speaking about it 3 seconds after it happened. So in those 3 seconds, my mind just formulated like 18 things that are going on out there with that dog. I have no idea. And if I didn't start talking about it, I probably would have spent more time trying to figure it out. But that's, for me, like what life is about, is we hear something, we see something, we observe something, and then we just get lost in all of these crazy stories about what's going on. And it's literally impossible for me to know what's going on right now out there with the dog, because I'm sitting here. And the more and more I talk about it, the more and more I want to know what happened with the dog. Probably nothing. Probably just two dogs passing each other on their walk. Right? But oh, the stories I can tell myself about what just went on out there. We do that all day with people and places and things and dogs. So, anyways, at the risk of talking about dogs all night and trying to bring that into practice, I'll pause there. As always, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening to explore what's on your mind. So.
Can you talk a little bit about what it's like for you to reopen the Dharma Pump Center?
Yeah. So I think, the question of what is it like for me to have us reopen, it, I think, became very clear probably about 18 months ago, after the first 6 months of being closed. At least that's where it hit for me, that like, okay, this is, as I said earlier, we closed March 12, 2020. And I think those first 3 to 6 months, I don't remember exactly where, but somewhere in that period of time, at least for me, thinking about it, I was like, okay, this could be going for a while. And I sit up here week in and week out, year after year after year, responding and sharing this practice. And so the simple answer is, how's it feel? It's great, right? I mean, that's the very simple part. But for me, the whole process of even having a place like this physically closed, what is it like to bring practice into all of that? And so for me, my first teacher always taught the paramitas, the perfections, the 6 practices. And we had to figure out a way to work those into a space that was physically closed, but in many ways wasn't closed at all. We just couldn't come in here, or at least you all couldn't come in here, right? But that meant the amount of people that were suffering was even greater. The amount of people that didn't have physical access to the practice, to the Sangha, to community, was even greater. The people, we have a huge recovery community. There's people, right now downstairs. And so the people in those worlds that are battling addiction, and many, it's truly a day-to-day fight and a life or death situation. Being close to that it's painful. But we had to come back to the 6 practices of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. And the first one, with the generosity, we had to figure out, okay, what can we give? And what we could give is, the ability to set up a little camera and give the Dharma virtually. So being able to now open the doors again, we had that 6-month run where we were open and shut down for the last 2+ or so. Now being able to be open physically as well as virtually is really beautiful. For me, the practice of morality is just looking at how can we honestly engage this community during a pandemic. And that's really difficult, because even though I said to Josh earlier downstairs, running a temple that's always open the way it's been was for 13 years straight was a lot easier than running a temple that's been closed for the last 2 years. Because just because you're physically closed doesn't mean that the pain and suffering has gone away. It's even, greater. So we have to figure out, how do we meet that demand? And in many ways, it's a relief to open again, because then it's just like this, to be able to be here for people who need it, but to be honest with what you can and can't do. The practice of patience, obviously, just continuing to be patient as the world, nearly 6 million people have died now from this in the last 2 years from COVID. And so being patient with just like our day-to-day lives, and then being patient with the temple and not rushing back. We always said we're going to stay many weeks to a month or 2 behind what the rest of the world seems to be doing with this stuff. And then the practice of diligence, it's just you're working hard constantly. That doesn't change. Really, the focus and the concentration is on how do we as individuals practice to then try to be there and support the people who need it the most, right? I mean, we need it the most too, but people that show up to places like this, and all of our millions of YouTube followers, Actually, I had to clarify to somebody last Saturday that we don't actually have 1 million YouTube followers, in case if any of you thought we do. But I think you all got that. And then the last paramita of wisdom is just knowing that we don't know. Here we are, we're open today. And really, even coming back to your question, like, it feels great, for us to have opened on Saturday and all these people here throughout the weekend. And but who knows what happens tomorrow? We have to be wise enough to know that what the future holds with everything in the world right now is so unknown. And that's why kind of coming back to that gratitude of like we are here now. And that feels great. Like I said, as much as I love sitting in this place, whether it's filled with people or empty, it's much nicer to have people in it. I felt kind of greedy sitting in here all by myself, all these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and it's just like me sitting here staring at some little camera thing. So, yeah, it's nice to share it. And there's definitely also, last thing I'll say on that is there's that joy, there's that excitement, there's that happiness, but there is truly a little bit of sadness too, because you reflect on like what's actually happened these last 2 years. Not to mention what's happening globally over the last couple weeks. There's a lot of sadness in the world right now, and I think spiritual places like this, you have to feel that. You have to really be with that sadness, and not this like false, like, excitement of how great it is to all be back together. Like, this is a sad time right now that we're all going through. And I think it's really important to not lose sight of that and not just get so lost in this excitement of like, we're all, so there's sadness too. People in this community that they were alive 2 years ago when this all started, and now they're not. So we sit with it. For me, I sit with that also. People's lives that have been lost over the last 2 years. Family and friends of people from this community that, maybe I don't know them directly, but I know the people and they've lost family and friends. So there's some sadness too. Absolutely. So, yeah. There's some thoughts. What else? Thoughts, questions? And you're learning really to deal with a lot of change. I mean, the Buddhist teaching on impermanence, like, it's one thing to kind of look at Buddhist teachings, to read them and to talk about impermanence and to talk about change. And then there's just the actual reality and the practice of like everything is changing all the time. And I think people often look at change as something that, is maybe big changes in the future, things like that. But, every moment we're having to adjust and, be with the world differently than we were before, and go through our days differently than we were before. So I think really embracing change has been a incredible practice. And I should say, I think what we've all gone through these last 2 years has created an incredible opportunity to really practice being with change and just kind of surrendering to so much that's beyond what we may potentially think we have some power or control over. Yeah. I said that I wasn't gonna, but there's a bunch of stuff happening here, so let me see if there are any thoughts or questions here on the YouTube. I know, so used to responding to all of you people, I don't want to completely ignore you. Oh, that's funny. Somebody said I heard a dog barking and I wanted to see him and pet him or her. Could have been a her. Come on now. All right. So I can see the chat now on YouTube. So if you do have a question or whatever, you can chime in here. What else? Thoughts, questions? Yeah.
I have a thought. 2 years ago, when this all started, I couldn't watch the news. I had to be outside somewhere. And when I was outside, I just thought, I used to imagine, visualize us sitting here listening to the birds. It's a very peaceful place.
Oh, you're saying when you were not able to be here, you would go outside and you would imagine being here.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, you could have snuck in, maybe, you know. So that was you. We heard it. You know.
It would have been a long drive.
That would have been a long drive. Yes. Yeah, it's you know, it's just having that peaceful place in our minds that we can go to when we need it is important. And I mean, yeah, it's great that this can be a place like that for you, you know. And I think that more recently, probably more than ever, we have so many things all day that are just triggering us. You know, like you said, the news and everything that's going on. It's just so easy to be triggered and to find ourselves in a state of mind that's miserable or depressed or angry or confused or scared. You know, emotions are running higher than ever right now. I really believe that. I see it. So having the ability to really just kind of find a place in your own mind, in your own heart, because, you know, we can't always go physically to where we want to go to, you know? So there's a school of Buddhism called Yogacara. It's a mind-only school. And it's really explores just the consciousness, what is beyond the physical form, and how our consciousness just abides, which is fascinating. And that we get attached to physical places, to, you know, physical people. We get attached to this physical life that we have, but this consciousness, referred to as Alaya Vijnana, this storehouse consciousness, that is just endless. So, yeah. So Joe asked a question here. Hi, Joe, and hello to everybody else. Fine, I won't ignore you. I'm sorry. Forgive me. How can we truly see things as they are? Well, that's an easy one to wrap up with. I think so let me kind of segue into that a little bit. So when we look at the three poisons in Buddhism, we talk about we suffer because of greed, anger, and ignorance. And the practice to overcome greed is generosity. The practice to overcome anger is compassion. The practice to overcome ignorance is wisdom. So often people will say, well, what is ultimate wisdom? And my response always is, instead of looking at what is ultimate wisdom, try to look at when you're being ignorant. I don't know about you, but when I'm thinking, saying, or doing things that are kind of ignoring the true nature of reality, or, if I'm just being an idiot, to put it in my terms, like I know that, right? And so that would put me in a place where I don't need to know what ultimate wisdom is. I just have to practice less ignorance. And if I'm being less of an idiot, less ignorant, then I'm by default creating more wisdom. If I am less angry, then by default there's more compassion. If I'm being less greedy, then by default there's more generosity. So it's a question of how can we truly see things as they are. Start by recognizing that nothing you see from your own perception is what it actually is. It's a lot easier that way. So one of my favorite teachings, and Joe, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this, but there's a Thich Nhat Hanh teaching that you can YouTube. It's What is Nirvana? And he says Nirvana is freedom from views. And he says that all views are wrong. So recognizing that everything that we perceive is not how it is. All we can see is our perception of that, whatever it may be, person, place, or thing. That's it. It's our perception of it. And for me, the practice of how I kind of integrated that teaching, this is a recording. It wasn't anything that I was able to, obviously someone says something, you can ask questions or go into dialogue about. So it was just kind of like a one-way teaching on all views are wrong. And what that taught me was to recognize that every view I have is just mine, my perception, my unenlightened view of a situation, and that it's not correct. It doesn't mean all of my views are going to change. It doesn't mean I'm going to abandon all of them. They're just mine, based on how I was conditioned and how I was raised and all my experiences in life that brought me to this moment and really kind of shaped my perceptions of reality. So when I look at the question of how can we truly see things as they are, begin to recognize how often you see things differently from how they are. That's a lot easier. And if you can begin to go through your day and recognize that your views and perceptions are completely tainted by your own personal ego, judgment, critiques, labels, likes and dislikes. This is the Buddhist teachings on non-duality. But if you can recognize that all of these things and people and places that you're seeing all day are just based on your own unenlightened views, and do that less, again, by default, you might be getting closer to the true nature of reality. And it's one thing to say that to see things as they are. Well, I'll put it this way. When you begin to look at something, the moment that you start to have a judgment of it, a label of it, likes, dislike, you missed it. For me, I love pizza. So if I take a bite of pizza, and then I start to try to describe to you what that pizza is, what it tastes like, that description is not correct. I'm now trying to interpret the experience I just had. And then you lose it. So for me, very specific with the Zen practice is to just be with things as they are. And go beyond labels, beyond judgment, beyond critiques, beyond duality. Joe, if you ever read the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra, these sutras very specifically are addressing non-duality, which is really the essence of what you're asking about, the emptiness teachings, and being an observer of things as they are and not a judger or critiquer. I don't even know if that's a word, but is that a word, critiquer? I don't know, but you know what I mean, right? Yeah. So I don't know, Joe, hopefully that's helpful. So I'm going to close on that. And Sean, yes, morning meditation practice has resumed. Mark, go Cubbies. All right. So we'll join palms on that. We'll do a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to nearly 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic and their family and friends who suffer at this time. And to all those in Ukraine at this time and the surrounding areas that suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace. All right, so a few quick announcements, and Sean, I'll kind of go over real quickly the schedule. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this place 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. So thanks for showing up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. So we do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Each night we have different practices going on. Our current schedule with, again, reopening this past Saturday, we have almost all of our classes are back in person. We have a new class, Zen Buddhism on Monday nights. Ken is back doing that, so that's Mondays. Tuesday, I do this. Wednesdays, Alex is doing the loving kindness, the metta practice. Travis does Dharma Bum Basics on Thursdays. And then I do this class as well on Saturday morning. Recoveries, and those are all in person. The Recovery Sangha, Tuesday night and Sunday morning. Those are in person as well. There are still a few classes that are on Zoom, and some are both. Our morning meditation, yes, Monday through Friday, 8 and 8:30. You can come and sit for 25 minutes, 8 to 8:25, and then 8:30 to 8:55. Come for one, come for both, either way. That is not there's no talking, there's no class. It's just a time to sit quietly. So if you've ever sat here at 8 in the morning, it's really nice to kind of just sit quietly at the start of the day. Buddha for You, same thing, has been closed for 16, 18 months. And so that's nice also to reopen. And that's open, the schedule's on the website, but a little bit during the week and then the weekends as well. So it is great to see all you back here again. Like I said, wonderful to sit with everybody and be safe. See you soon.